Daniel became a millionaire at 8:17 on a Tuesday morning. By lunchtime, he already understood why $1 million had not made him free. His net worth tracker showed $1,003,418. Then he opened the detailed breakdown and the $1 million seemed to disappear. $420,000 was tied up in his house. $340,000 was locked inside retirement accounts. $170,000 was invested for the future. Only $30,000 was sitting in cash. Daniel was officially a millionaire, but he still couldn't leave his job without pulling apart the wealth he had spent 15 years building. Over the next 12 months, he discovered something even more uncomfortable. The difficult part was no longer earning money, it was dealing with the fear of using it. Chapter 1. The $1 million he couldn't spend. Daniel stared at the number on the screen. $1 million. He had actually reached it. But the moment he clicked on the breakdown, that single impressive number became a collection of assets he could barely touch. This wasn't a vault filled with cash. It was a carefully built structure, and removing one piece seemed likely to weaken everything else. Around $420,000 was home equity. Another $340,000 sat in retirement accounts behind age restrictions and possible penalties. About $170,000 was invested and growing for the future. Selling those investments meant giving up that growth and possibly creating a tax bill. That left roughly $30,000 in cash he could use without much thought. This was the first misunderstanding Daniel had to confront. Net worth isn't the same as cash. For 15 years, he had imagined $1 million as the ultimate form of security. Instead, he now had a complicated financial machine that he was afraid to disturb. He could sell the house, but he would still need somewhere to live. He could take money from his investments, but that felt like stealing from his future. He had built wealth to feel protected. Now he felt responsible for guarding it. Chapter 2. The finish line moves. For years, Daniel had repeated the same promise to himself: reach $1 million and everything will be fine. The moment he got there, his mind moved the finish line. This is a common effect called hedonic adaptation. People adjust surprisingly quickly to new circumstances, whether those circumstances are good or bad. A milestone that once felt extraordinary can soon begin to feel normal. $1 million had been a distant dream. Within days, it felt like a starting point. The worries came quickly. What would inflation do to the money? How expensive would healthcare become? What if his parents needed financial help later? The amount that once looked almost untouchable now seemed like the opening balance for a long and expensive future. Daniel started doing anxious calculations. By the end of the week, his target was no longer $1 million. It was $2 million. A few weeks later, the number quietly became 3. His comparisons had changed too. Before becoming a millionaire, Daniel compared himself with coworkers and neighbors. Now he noticed people with larger portfolios, more successful businesses, and more expensive homes. Research on social comparison has found that people often look upward toward those who have more. Daniel was doing exactly that. His wealth continued to grow, but his feeling of security didn't grow with it. Chapter 3. The first major drop. A few months later, the market fell. Nobody stole anything from Daniel's house or bank account. Still, the value of his investments dropped by about $70,000. He understood intellectually that the loss was only a change in market value on a screen. Emotionally, that explanation did almost nothing. Daniel began checking his accounts before breakfast. He refreshed the dashboard during work meetings, looked again after dinner, and checked once more before going to bed. Money had frightened him before, but the fear had changed. He used to worry that he would never have enough. Now he worried that what he already had would disappear. Loss aversion helps explain that reaction. Losing an amount of money often hurts more than gaining the same amount feels satisfying. The $70,000 decline did more than reduce the number on a spreadsheet. It damaged Daniel's sense of control. The more he owned, the more he felt he could lose. He became increasingly cautious and less spontaneous. Then other people learned about the money, and the pressure changed again. Chapter 4. Everyone has an opportunity. It began at a family gathering. Someone asked Daniel how work was going. He felt proud of what he had accomplished and answered a little too openly. He didn't make a grand announcement, but the news spread. The calls began the following week. A cousin wanted him to invest in a restaurant idea that supposedly couldn't fail. An old friend sent him a property deal that was too good to pass up. A relative asked for a loan to cover an urgent bill. Daniel was no longer simply Daniel. To some people, he had become a source of funding. He found himself pushed into roles he had never asked for: family lender, emergency fund, and reluctant angel investor. Saying no felt selfish. Saying yes meant risking his own security to solve somebody else's problem. That created a question he didn't enjoy asking: did these people value him, or were they interested in what his money could do for them? Daniel started giving vague answers. He became more guarded and less available. The secrecy protected his finances, but it also created distance in his relationships. Chapter 5. The reward that became a requirement. With all that anxiety building, Daniel decided to celebrate the milestone he had worked so hard to reach. He bought a larger home and a nicer car. For the first few weeks, Both felt wonderful. Pulling into the new driveway made 15 years of effort feel real. Then the bills began arriving. The mortgage was larger, property taxes went up, insurance became more expensive. Maintaining the bigger home felt less like an occasional chore and more like another subscription that never ended. This is lifestyle inflation. Eat a reward can become a new baseline once you get used to it. What once felt luxurious soon begins to feel necessary. Daniel's money hadn't vanished, but more of it had already been promised to future bills. The home and car were meant to represent freedom. Instead, they created larger monthly obligations. The new house made him look more successful, but it also made leaving his stressful job much harder. Chapter 6: The Job He Couldn't Leave. For more than a decade, Daniel had made himself a promise. Once I reach $1 million, I'm leaving. Months after crossing the line, he was still sitting at the same desk and working at the same job he didn't love. He wasn't staying because the work had suddenly become meaningful. He stayed because he was afraid. The salary supported his more expensive lifestyle. The job provided health insurance. That reliable income allowed him to avoid selling investments and shrinking the wealth he had spent years building. The irony was hard to ignore. Daniel had spent 15 years building wealth so he could escape compulsory work. Now he continued working because he was scared of losing that wealth. He was richer than ever, but fear still shaped his decisions. There was the fear of a market decline, the fear of a large unexpected bill, and the fear that his financial structure would begin to weaken if he walked away from regular income. Chapter 7: The Friend Who Had Less But Lived More. One afternoon, Daniel met an old friend named Marcus. Marcus wasn't a millionaire. He owned a smaller home, drove an ordinary car, and had a modest investment account. But he took most Fridays off to spend time with his children. His monthly expenses were low enough that he rarely felt overwhelmed by them. Marcus wasn't careless with money. He had simply designed a life that required less money to maintain. Daniel had spent years trying to increase what he earned and owned. Marcus had quietly reduced how much he needed. That difference affected Daniel more than the market drop. Marcus appeared to have the thing Daniel had been pursuing all along. It wasn't a larger number. It was more control over his time and less pressure in his daily life. Chapter 8: The Question the Spreadsheet Couldn't Answer. Daniel eventually met with his financial advisor. They reviewed the familiar subjects: asset allocation, risk tolerance, and retirement projections. The advisor could model many possible futures. Some were optimistic, some cautious, and others disastrous. Then Daniel asked the question he actually cared about: how much is enough? The advisor paused. He could calculate probabilities, but he couldn't define Daniel's purpose. A spreadsheet could estimate whether the money might last. It couldn't tell Daniel what kind of life he should build with it. That was the problem. For 15 years, Daniel had treated wealth as a score. He needed to reach a specific number and keep raising it. But money is a tool, not a scorecard. Daniel knew the number he wanted. He had never defined what he wanted the number to accomplish.